Hey all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be asking a question. It's how many races are too many in your game? This is a difficult question, and it's going to be different for every single game. The answer is going to be different. So let's look at some of the pros and cons of the different formats. So let's start out with the bad, which is too many races. This is going to be, again, different for every campaign and for every game. But I'll start off by talking about if you have too many races, it's impossible to highlight them all, and it's impossible to give them each their own niche as well. They're going to start to overlap. And once they overlap, you know, why do you even have two of them? Because they're both kind of stealing each other's thunder, stepping on each other's toes. They're just getting in the way in a lot of storyline ways. They just get in the way. It's too many options can be a really bad thing, especially when they're not well differentiated, and when they're basically the same option with different skins on them. So, for example, in some settings, you'll have like the barbaric races of like bugbears and goblins and orcs and gnolls and perhaps troglodytes or lizardmen. Like, it's very easy. Bullywugs, can't forget the bullywugs. It's very easy to make them all kind of blend together. They're all kind of the same. Actually, Forgotten Realms had a lot of them. That was like it's like gibberlings and svarts and kobolds and goblins and Saloi, Tassoli, perhaps that's how it's pronounced. But they have like 5 or 6 that are all, as far as I could tell, the same race, just with like different names, and they looked a little different, but their cultures were all identical. Now, none of them had very much culture, but they were all identical. Basically, they were just bad guys for you to kill. And because there were so many of them, you couldn't really get that much play out of any individual one. Like, if they'd all been Svarts, for example, you could have examined their culture in more depth. Because if you're going to fight 5 tribes of Svarts, each one can add some flavor, and each one can even show differences between these different tribes of the same race. But if instead of that, you've got 5 tribes, and one is a Svart tribe, and one is Tassoli, and one is Gibberling, and one is a Goblin, and one's a Kobold tribe. They're all going to kind of blend together, but they're not going to form a cohesive picture of a race. So in that first scenario, if we get a player character who's a Svart, he can meet other Svarts and explore their culture, extol on it, make contacts, have romance options, perhaps, mentors. But in the second mode, where they're each a different tribe, like he has all those opportunities with one of them. But with the other ones, he's going to have, very limited opportunity. Maybe even the same as a human character would. So you're really limiting some of your story options there. And this isn't just of the like 3-foot-tall savage guys. You can look at hill giants, ogres, trolls, ettins, Fomorians. There's a whole bunch of cyclopses, minotaurs. There's a whole bunch of large, brutish thug races that also blend together. So you have the same problems, or medium-sized races, or you could do a whole campaign just on all the lizard races that are wandering around some settings. So there's definitely a point where there's too many. Moving down from that, if you have a high number of races, but they do each have their own niche, and they are each unique and different, and they don't step on each other's toes, but you have a very high number of them. If you've got that kind of situation, then you can have the problem of spreading yourself too thin. So maybe you didn't put as much writing in to each individual one because there's so many of them, and you don't have time to explore all of them. Perhaps, I run my campaigns for about a year, so I only have time to explore like 2 or 3 races. If you're running for 2 years, you could probably get 6 races. If you're running for 3 years, you probably add another 3, get 9 races out of that. And that's fine. And it can be good to have too many as well. But there's definitely fine lines and degrees. What I mean by that is if you have just too many, and it's a bad thing, it's because different players want to explore different ones, but you don't have time to do it. That's where it's going to cause problems. And that's a fairly minor problem as compared to, what's the difference between a hill giant and an ogre again? Is there one? Like, that's a major problem. But just do we go visit the hill giants or do we visit the ogres? Oh, we can only do one. That's a minor problem. So it's a big difference. And then what I was saying is sometimes it is good to have things you can't explore, because you can always do a sequel campaign. You can bring it back. Or you can just have that great feeling that it's a real world and you can't do everything. Just like in the real world, you can't do everything. So that can be good as well. And then you're going to have your sweet spot of just enough races. We can explore most of them. They're well differentiated from each other. And you're going to have a good time with it. And then, we could look at what if there's just one race, like a modern campaign, or some sci-fi campaign, even some fantasy. There's just the one sapient, intelligent race going on, and you might have like sub races, like species, ethnicities. But because they're all one race, you get a lot more out of them mechanically in terms of, you got romance options, you've got this genetic, biological compatibility. So, when you meet a lizard man, you won't really understand how his biology works. He can see in infrared, but he can't see very well, and he's got this sense of smell, and he's cold-blooded, and he lays eggs once a year, and he's covered in scales, so he feels things literally different. He can change colors, so he communicates with color changing. He stinks like pheromones, perhaps. So you can have some big differences biologically that create barriers to communication and understanding. Whereas if they're all the same race, his skin might be a different color. He's blue-skinned, his hair is silver. He's like 7 feet tall, and he's skinny, has a rail, but he's still human. I understand, basically where he's coming from. Versus if it's an alien creature or a completely different species, you're going to have different communication options with them. So like I said, the actual number is going to vary person to person. So for me, in a 1-year campaign, I'm looking at like 3 I can explore. So I'll probably give out like 5 options. So we have 2 that we can't explore in that time frame. But I like that that they get to choose, and it's not imposed upon them, the players, that is. And then for me, so I'll have 5. I'll be able to explore like 2 or 3. But if I had 10, I'm like, that's way too many options for a 1-year campaign. Even if they're all unique and different and laid out different, that's too many, because you can't even keep them straight in your head. You don't have enough time to intro them and understand them and explore them, because each race will probably take at least 1 session to intro so that you understand them. At bare minimum, 1 session. So if you got 8 races, that's 8 sessions you got to devote to that, and like that's a quarter-year campaign. That's a long time to devote to one element, which is just the racial politics. So for me, it's gonna be like 3 to 5. So, I think the moral of it is just think ahead. Like everything, think ahead. How much time do you have to explore the races? How many options do you want to give the players? Are these two races different enough to be different races? Or are they kind of similar so you can just lump them together? Are bugbears and gnolls that different, really? Or can they just be the same thing? Are troglodytes and lizard folk that different? Are bullywugs and lizard folk that different? So I've done my monster ecology series, showing how I make each one as different as I can. I got dwarfs, hobbits, elves, lizard folk, bullywugs. I got the 4 elemental races. I got 3 or 4 goblinoid races, greenskins. So I could play one campaign with all of them and more. I have other races I haven't filmed yet, but it would be too much. We can't explore all that within a year. That would take like 10 years to explore. And instead of doing a 10-year-long campaign, I'd rather do 10 one-year-long campaigns so I can do different rule sets. So just plan ahead. That's the moral of the story. And that's all I really got to say about that. So I would like to hear, though, if you've seen games with too many races, too few, if you've seen games where 2 races are basically the same thing, but because they're not, it's hurt your story, unfortunately. If demons and devils and daemons all being different, it's just confusing and useless, so you should really just condense them, because you don't have time to devote to all 3. Let me know that in the comments below. But I'm going to be signing off now. Everybody have a good day. Cheers.